Yo, 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 what's up, Internet? It's your boy, Vegabomber, and...
Mike, how's it going,
right.
guys?
Horror Mike. That's right, I told you. I told you I'd bring him back. So we got to figure out if we want to call you Mike Horror or Horror Mike.
Oh, man, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out by the end of it. I like both.
That's right.
My MC name.
We're going to do something. We got to figure it out. But we brought him back because, as you know, whenever we bring Mike on, that means we're going to tackle something that's really tough, or maybe it's got something that's got fanboys just talking about it. And this time what we're going to talk about is villains, because Mike, you've seen this. All of a sudden now, it appears that since we can't seem to create good villains, we just need to make the superheroes fight each other because we just can't seem to create good villains.
We run out of villains, so we'll just have them punch each other. We've got two major releases, Batman vs. Superman and Civil War, of villains versus villains. However, as we'll discuss, only one of those movies has a actually good antagonist.
Yes, and we're getting into all of that. So here's what you can expect for the next few minutes. We're going to talk about what is a good villain, and then after that we'll talk a little bit about what are the chief characteristics. You know, these are going to be kind of the conversations that you probably are having with your own friends when you sit down and talk about whether was Loki genius or was he not. You know, what was the hell wrong with Malekith or whichever. And then we'll find out where you guys place him on your list. So with that said, we're just going to jump right into it. And so, Mike, the first question for us to noodle on while we nosh on some prepared food here.
That's how he tricked me over here. He said, I was like, I don't know. He said, I brought chips. I'm like, oh, I guess I come.
That's right. So the first question is this.
Yep.
All right, because there's so many different types of villains. You know, there's several archetypes. But how do you define villain?
So, when I define villain, at the end of the day, at its core, a villain is an antagonist. Not always, but a good portion of them are antagonists. So, we'll get into this probably a little bit later, but I want to, for me, it's hard to describe a good villain. It's hard to describe what is a villain. Sure, there's a great dictionary definition, but I think at my core, I'm going to say the antagonist to a story. It's the person that either drives a story or complicates a story. At the end of the day, I think a villain almost doesn't exist or is unnecessary unless you have a story there.
Yes.
Obviously. So either, for me, it's the antagonist that either is a challenge to the story or is used to progress the story. So that's the only guess I can really come up with. What are your thoughts?
I like it. So I would just say, if I try to simplify it a little bit, I would just say that the villain, or at least great villains, because we're going to talk about really, really good villains, which are hard to find, by the way, this is the person who's basically the antithesis of the hero. He's usually the opposite. So where the hero is kind of just figuring things out, like Luke Skywalker, the villain, Darth Vader, is already levels ahead of him and good at it and has a plan and knows exactly what he wants to do. And so the good villain, I would say, is definitely, you know, they coined the term villainous, but this is someone who's usually has evil and no compunction about killing, breaking laws, being criminal, or any of these things at all. This is not an issue for these particular villains. They don't lose sleep over doing anything that's going to get them to their end goal. So that's...
And matter of fact, and see, the great thing about villain is there are no hard set rules, because you just mentioned those great things, but then you get great villains like Nurse Ratched. She wasn't trying to kill anyone. She just wanted people to follow the rules. She was just being a dick about it, but she wanted people to follow the rules. But she is very clearly the villain of that story.
Yes.
So that's the cool thing about the villains, and I guess characters in general. There's no set rules, and a good character doesn't follow any really set rules at the time. And most good characters break those rules or those subsets. So.
Yeah, I think that if the villain is not. Because you also have bad guys. So if the villain is not a bad guy on some level, if he's not, or at least if he thinks he's doing the right thing, and even though he's shown that it's wrong, still keeps doing the wrong thing because in his mind he thinks it's the right thing, that makes for a delicious villain also as well.
Exactly. So no, like I said, now, again, something we'll get into a little bit later, I've always been a big fan of the villain. That doesn't think it's a villain. It just seems more realistic, more true to life. Very few people throughout history have done terrible things thinking they were the bad guys. I mean, look at the Crusades. I mean, those people thought they were fighting on the good side. You know, it's fighting God. And then you get People like Hitler. He thought he was trying to help the German people. Turns out he was committing mass genocide. If you look at history, and most people, even terrorists, think they're doing because they want to serve their religion most of the time. Most good villains, in my opinion, and there are again exceptions. That's a great thing. Villains don't have to have any rules. Most good villains think they're the good guy, and that's something I always look forward to in a kind of an antagonist villain. But yeah, I think that's kind of what I'm gonna.
Yeah. So I would say this: when we use the words antagonist and villain, I do want to make a differentiation there, because the villain can be an antagonist, but the antagonist doesn't necessarily have to be the villain.
Exactly.
And I'll give you a great example: Uncle Owen in Star Wars, right? He was antagonizing Luke in that he was saying, "No, I want you to stay on the farm, the moisture farm, another season because it's going to help me out." That's the last thing that I want to hear about it, right? He just shut Luke down right away. Well, that was clearly antagonistic because we saw how Luke handled it, and when he started to walk off, remember we said, "Where are you going?" It was apparently nowhere, right? And so that was antagonism, but Uncle Owen definitely wasn't the villain.
No one in their right mind would ever say Uncle Owen's the villain, unless in episode 8 turns out it's all been Uncle Owen this whole time.
This whole time, right? Like he's Snoke.
Exactly. You only saw one skeleton there.
Too bad he was burnt to a crisp, so we know it's not.
No, it could be like you only saw one skeleton, you never checked it. So, no, I think you're truly right. An antagonist doesn't always have to be a villain, and a villain doesn't always have to be the antagonist. We follow stories. I mean, look at Scarface. He's very clearly a villain, but he's the protagonist. So, a villain doesn't always have to be the antagonist, and vice versa. It's just you get there is a difference in those, but for the most part, a lot of really good villains are antagonists because by nature of just most stories, the protagonist is the hero.
Absolutely. And before we get into some real solid ones, because we're going to do that, because you're probably wondering, like, well, give us an example. It's coming.
Matter of fact, my number one example is an extreme example of an antagonist.
Yes, you will love it. So let's talk about, what do you think the chief characteristics then are of villains? So since we've defined the villain, if I could just talk, what would you say are some of the chief characteristics of the villain? It doesn't have to be any specific order, but...
Well, I thought about for a good bit. For me, I really only came down, for me personally, two good characteristics. One, they've got to be a legitimate threat to the story and or the protagonist, plural and singular. I'll give you. We'll probably get into more, but there are tons. The world's littered with just crappy villains who it's like the hero just stomps. Whereas another one I think is the biggest is the villain's motivation.
Yes. Yes.
If you don't understand the villain's motivations or they're very unclear, it can all fall apart. Like to me, a good motivation, everything the villain does should be in service of that motivation. So, for example, if Heath Ledger Joker at some point saved puppies.
Yeah.
Well, now I don't know what his motivation is. Now I'm confused.
Yeah.
Whereas a good villain, no matter what, even when he's drinking his soda, should be in service of his motivation.
That's right.
He should be drinking his soda like Heath Ledger Joker would punch holes in his soda and then drink it.
Yeah.
So, to me, a good villain, those are my two biggest traits. I think good motivation and have to be a challenge. They have to challenge it in some way. They can't just be pushovers.
Absolutely. And I would say that some of my biggest characteristics of the villains, that actually the great villains, they're always very maniacal. They're very smart, they're very obsessed, and they're always 2 or 3 steps ahead of the hero. They're not like winging it and just hoping that this thing goes through. They've been planning it, they've figured it out, they've used whatever internal motivation to keep this at the forefront of their mind. Exactly. You mentioned it earlier, in Civil War, Zemo did not let go what happened to his family whenever the big part of the earth fell down. Right?
Oh yeah, spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers. Yeah, spoiler alert. Yeah, we'll put that up there. Definitely on. But thank you for letting me know that. So with the Zemo, you know exactly what his motivation is. He takes a full year to concoct a plan to flush out people and then put people in the positions that he wanted to put them in, so they would cause chaos.
How many movies has Marvel and the Marvel Pantheon has been like? 10 movies and like 40 different TV shows. I'm sorry, 40 episodes of TV, over 40 episodes of TV shows, and we finally got like a really solid villain. I think it's really sad that over the course of how long has it been? 8 years, we've only gotten 3 solid villains, which we'll definitely be touching on them. And one will touch on about how that villain is both a worst and best villain.
Yeah, and that's the thing about this. That's why, like, because I think people think, oh, I know what a villain is. It's the bad guy. Yeah, but then there's folks saying that, okay, but the bad guy, you know, like, for example, with Star Wars, it was always like the criticism, the funny thing is the criticism is that Darth Vader was just a one-note, mustache-twirling villain. He was evil for evil's sake. However, you look at everybody's top 10 list, and Darth Vader's on it.
And why do you think that is? He's a man of purpose.
Yep.
And you understood his motivation.
Yep.
And he was a threat. I mean,
yes.
Something I point out to people all the time. In those movies, you constantly never see him at full strength. He is scary because he only ever has to use a portion of his strength. He could have annihilated Luke at any point throughout the series, even in Return. Yes. Where Luke probably would have been able to put up a fight by that point, but he's toying with him. That's why it makes Empire such an amazing fight scene. The whole time he's fighting, he's like, look at how powerful I am. You can be this. I love it. Man, we could do an entire video on it. That's right. That's hours on that, on how great that film is.
Because, you know, if a villain is stupid, then he's just in jail.
He's already been caught.
Yeah. Right? So that's why you see, like, the Hannibal Lecters, for example. You know, these guys have been sitting back, they've been baking on the plan, and then they know exactly how they're going to spring it. And then I think another characteristic of the villain that you'll see is not only are they smart and maniacal and obsessed, and they're not easily moved off of what they're going to do, is that they always seem to know how to gain the psychological advantage on the hero. Exactly. We're talking about the great villains, not the run-of-the-mill villains, but the great villains. And so when I think of Heath Ledger's Joker, he had the psychological advantage over Batman the whole time. I mean, he told him, what's your one rule? And then Batman told him, he goes, well, that's the one rule you'll have to break in order to... I mean, the whole time he was in Batman's kitchen, and Batman couldn't figure it out.
And he even games him.
Yeah.
He even games him to the point of, he's like, you can only say one person. There's no way you can say both of these people.
Yeah.
No, it's a genius. Like I said, I think we'll be getting to that very soon, because Heath Ledger is definitely on my list for Heath Ledger Joker. I always have to be specify that, because I don't think there's ever been a bad Joker in any medium. Especially the animated one, which is an incredible version of the Joker. Just the Heath Ledger Joker, they really nailed. And now here's the thing I want to bring up. I'll let the audience think about this. Definitely mention this and kind of what y'all think. Something I've always felt about the Heath Ledger Joker is it's such a great just villain. It could have been any Batman villain. It could have been Mad Hatter. It could have been like, it's just such a good almost template, which sadly everyone just has been taking recently. You see that now. You see the Heath Ledger Joker everywhere. But it was such a great performance. It could have been any villain, and it still works. It just shows you how when you have all the key elements, it can work with almost any genre. It can work with almost any, like, and the key elements are there with Heath Ledger Joker. There's very little, like, I dare people to give me like something bad about that Heath Ledger Joker. I mean, it's such a great performance.
Yeah,
it's a great character. It's a great. The closer you get is his plan was a little bit predictive at times, but those are here and there.
But if they work, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You know what I mean? It's like movies, right? They know what formula works, and they keep doing it, even though people complain about certain plot points and storylines. Notice people keep shelling out the money, keep going to see the movie, and the movie hasn't really changed much.
Exactly.
You know, it's still the same thing. It's got a villain, it's got a good guy, there's a MacGuffin that the good guy's trying to keep the bad guy from getting them, because if the bad guy gets it, all of a sudden he's going to have all this ultimate power, and then you got to call in your friends to help you out. I mean, this has been done over and over and over again, and it's still there. And so you have the whole idea of the hero's journey, but then there's also the villain's journey. And the interesting thing is that a great villain, and I think this is a great point to make, Mike, is that even a great villain, if he's really, really good, you don't even have to know his backdrop. You don't even have to know his backstory.
No, that for sure. Now that I totally agree on. You know something?
Yeah.
That's true of many just characters in general. I would feel. But yeah, a good. I mean, you're gonna hear us bring him up a million times. Heath Ledger Joker.
Yeah.
You could imply it. You could sit down and figure it out. But at the end of the day, we will never know
Yep.
that backstory.
Yep.
Especially because he passed away, and if you believe rumors, they had plans for him in the third one.
Mm-hmm.
But we will never know that origin, and that's what makes him so great. And I think there are many villains where you don't even need to know their origin and backstory.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, I think there are villains that get stronger due to their backstory, as we'll mention, like Zemo.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get the Heath Ledger Joker, man, that's a great example. You don't need some good characters. You don't even need the man with no name.
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of heroes.
Yes.
You know nothing about him except that he's a good person.
Mm-hmm.
You can infer what happened,
Mm-hmm.
but you just know he's a good person. He just wants to try to, well, think at first, if I remember right, it's been years since the movie, right?
Yeah,
he wanted to be left alone.
Yeah.
But then he's like, okay, I'll help these people. No, I think you're right. Like, it again, it all comes down to the story you're there for, and if they add to that story, you don't need any more. Like, it's like making a cake; you don't need extra ingredients. Making too many ingredients falls apart. This is a problem that Superman, Batman had. It tried to do too much. It tried to add. Everyone had a backstory. The villain had. They wanted to make the villain be this smart. But they wanted to explain this, and they wanted. It was.
Yeah, it was a mess.
It was a mess.
It was definitely a mess. And so let's talk about them for a minute, since we've been bringing up movies, and it's hard not to talk about villains and not give you an example, because people remember the examples and analogies because we love cinema, right?
Exactly.
So in the cinematic universe, and of course, if you can think of some literary ones and some animated ones, who would you say would make it into your top 3 villains?
Easy.
Okay.
This is super easy.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one technically isn't even really a villain.
Okay.
It's the Xenomorphs from the Alien franchise.
Okay.
Ripley, Aliens, Alien 3, and Resurrection.
Mm-hmm.
No, and Prometheus.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I love them is that they aren't really villains. They're animals. They could easily just been bears. They are animals who just want to live. And we're just trying to survive. It's worse. We're almost the antagonists because we came into their environments. Mm-hmm. They were just there. They didn't choose to be there. They were brought there, and they decided we're gonna live here. We're gonna make a home here. Mm-hmm. So I love the aliens. I think they're horrifying. They're huge threats. Mm-hmm. They're huge swarms. They're very powerful creatures. Mm-hmm. I love them. So my number one is gonna be aliens. Mm-hmm. Followed very closely by Wilson Fisk from the Daredevil television series. Okay. Think he's an incredible villain, and he's another great one where you'll see the theme here. I love villains that aren't really bad. Mm-hmm. Fisk is a character, again, spoilers here, is a character who genuinely wants to help his city, and realize putting on tights and punching people doesn't help a city.
Isn't the end?
Yeah, controlling the crime is what helps the city. Mm-hmm. So I love Wilson Fisk, and my if I had to just pick it at 3, Moriarty. Sherlock Holmes. That's a great example of a villain who...
Love it.
Who is the exact opposite. This is a person who's as smart as Holmes, as physically adept as Holmes, has all the advantages as Holmes, except these are 2 people that went in 2 different directions. One decided he wanted to help people, the other decided, I'm going to try to screw over and prove to everyone how smart I am. That's why I've always loved Moriarty. I think he's just a great villain, and I don't ever think he's been underrated. I just think he disappears from the public consciousness every few years, because whenever Sherlock Holmes comes and goes every 10 or so years. And whenever he comes back, you gotta have Moriarty. Same with one of my favorite heroes, Zorro. He comes and goes every 10 or so years, comes back, and everyone hoots and holler about him. So a few ones I would probably add would be, obvious easy one would be, like we've mentioned before, Heath Ledger Joker. Right. We mentioned Vader. Yep. Palpatine. Yeah. Oh, forgot about Palpatine. Palpatine's a good one. I think I'm also going to have to go with Captivate Annie Wilkes.
Annie Wilkes, that's right.
And I wrote down one that I was like, man, I completely forgot about him, but he's a great villain. John Doe from Seven. Yeah. John Doe is a character who thinks he is the good guy. He thinks he's trying to do good. And I don't think he was doing God's will. I think he just wanted to prove that people are bad. Yeah. And right. And just he cannot be stopped at every step of the way. He is ahead of everybody, and I love that. And I didn't mention him, but I think he's going to be on your list for sure. Is Zemo? I think he's very underrated. Now we can have a whole debate here. I think I would have preferred if maybe the movie, if the situation had just happened naturally. Yeah. These events had just happened. But man, if you're going to have that villain, man, that's how you do it, man. Yeah, for sure. I think
no, that sounds good.
And I'm definitely going to mention this because I want to also talk about worst villains. And right now on that list, Loki in the Thor movie is in top villains.
Okay.
But as we'll discuss later, he is also he's in the worst villains. He's had 2 movies to just be the worst, just the worst bad guy.
Yeah.
I think Thor 2,
which is going to shock some people.
Yeah,
I said that because there's going to be some people right now going, "What? You can't say anything bad about Loki. Come on,
I mean, y'all halfway, guys. I think he has good moments, and I think he also has some of the worst moments. I think Thor 2, you can write a paper on just how bad the villains are.
Yeah.
Like Thor 2 has so many problems across the board.
Yeah.
I genuinely think that one and Iron Man 2 are the worst of the cinematic movies, and I think they're just cash grabs.
Yeah.
But
no, they're bad. They're bad. And so for me, and I'm trying to I'll try to pick some ones that you didn't say. Of course, I'm in full agreement with Vader, and of course Heath Ledger's Joker, definitely Palpatine for sure. I would throw in Hannibal Lecter.
Ooh.
I mean, the whole psychological advantage that he has, and they need him because they want to find out how he could think and how that might help them solve. But he's really thinking about how he's going to get somebody close enough so that he could get this person, kill this person, then get out of jail and then go visit this person. And so he's just, he's not even in the movie long, but he is just dominating. The other thing I would say, characteristic, just as I now think about it, is notice the great villains are always very distinct. There's always something very distinct about them. Whether it's a nervous tick or they're very uppity about grammar or the way they look or something, but they always have this sort of thing.
And that's what
makes them great. So let me finish my list real quick. And so I would say I would put Norman Bates in there as well as a great villain, because here's a guy who has a very calm and very normal demeanor, it seems, but then yet this guy, you wouldn't trust him. You couldn't trust him. Anybody that's going to dress up like their mom and then carry a knife and then still talk to their dead mom, I mean, that dude's gone. And so that's, when you talk about putting the fear in somebody, he definitely does that. And then I would also add to this Anton Sugar from No Country for Old Men.
Yep.
Right? I mean, you talk about, oh my gosh, you don't know what this guy is going to do next. And so with him, just like, because that's a story of 3 guys, right? There's a guy that's in the middle, and there's a guy that's good, and there's a guy that's bad. And the guy that's bad is tracking the guy that's good. And then you got old Tommy Lee Jones is the guy who's kind of in the middle. He's the sheriff that's just trying to get in there and figure out what's going on.
He just wants to see he just wants to stop it. He just wants to stop all of it.
Oh man! And so I would say my honorable mentions would definitely be, Agent Smith from The Matrix.
Of course.
Oh my gosh! And the first one, not when he was like 100 of them, because I think that actually diluted his villainous value in that case. And then I would say from The Shining, Jack Torrance, right? Because here's a guy that started off as the good guy. He was a protagonist at first, but then the cabin fever and then him having a writer's block and then being able to figure things out.
He's driven to madness.
And then he just goes to madness, and then you see this guy just flip, and I would have to say that's a villain. That's an incredible story arc for a villain.
I agree.
In that.
And I also want to mention Norman Bates has probably one of my favorite moments in a movie is when you're at the end when you realize just how far gone this guy is. And he's thinking in his mom's voice. He's just, "Today I wouldn't hurt a fly." And that fly lands. Oh man, so creepy.
These guys are good, and so I would say that these are, now you may have some of your own list, and by the way, feel free to comment below who makes it into your top 10 list of villains all time. There's certainly a few more, but sadly, when you think about 350 movies or so come out a year, and if you ask someone, hey, who is the best villain, some people struggle just to get 5. And that's kind of crazy out of 350 movies. Now you might say, well maybe those movies all don't have antagonists. Well, most movies do have at least, if they don't have a villain, they have at least an antagonist.
Exactly. Like I said, now granted, you can always argue, like I was thinking of, like, there are great movies that don't have antagonists. Like, I don't know, Deep Impact. Okay, it's not a great movie, but 2012 doesn't have an antagonist. They're not every movie. I mean, okay, technically the weather or the environment is the antagonist.
Like Twister and Deep Sea.
Exactly. Those are technically the antagonists, but they're not villains. See, I think Jaws is a villain. I would consider him a villain, but I don't think something like Twister doesn't have a villain. It's just the antagonist is being the Twister. The Twister isn't... See, to me, it goes back to... That doesn't make it a villain because it has no motivation. The Twister is just a Twister.
Sure.
Whereas something like Aliens or other ones we've mentioned, their
Right.
motivation is survive, is to keep thriving, is to
Right.
live. Twister doesn't care one way or the other. Twister's going to happen regardless of if you stop it or not.
That's true.
I mean, and regardless of if you get out of the way or not, the Twister is going to still keep going.
Mm-hmm.
So, no, I definitely, I don't think every movie needs it, but man, I would easily say about 80% of movies have villains.
Absolutely.
Easily have villains, because that's conflict. It's easy conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, it's really sad we don't have many more good villains. You're about to see a bunch of bad examples.